Have you ever wondered how a massive union like the UAW, with hundreds of thousands of members, actually functions day to day? What are its real goals? Who actually holds the power? Well, believe it or not, the answers are all supposed to be in their official rulebook. So today, we're going to crack it open. We're doing a deep dive, an anatomy lesson on the UAW Constitution. Okay, let's get right into it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. A constitution? Sounds kind of dry, right? But this isn't just some dusty legal document. You have to think of it as the actual blueprint for the entire organization. It maps out the structure, the rules, and really, the very soul of the union. And that really is the central question we're digging into here, isn't it? How on earth do you manage an organization this huge, this influential? How do you make sure the people on the shop floor, the actual members, still have a voice? Well, the official answer starts right here. This single document, the UAW Constitution, is the source of truth for the whole organization. Every single rule, every right, every ounce of power, it all flows from what's written in these pages. It's our guide for this entire explainer. The union itself calls it the highest law. A better way to think about it is as the organization's DNA. It's the genetic code that dictates everything. How every single part of the union, from a local meeting all the way up to the international president, is supposed to work. So, before we get into the nitty-gritty of who runs what, the Constitution actually kicks off with the big picture stuff, the why. What is this union even for? What are its core beliefs? This is where we find the soul of the organization. And check this out. The preamble starts with some very familiar-sounding words, doesn't it? It directly echoes the U.S. Declaration of Independence. Right from the first sentence, it sets this incredibly high-minded democratic tone. It frames the entire mission of the union in the language of fundamental human rights. Lofty ideals are great, but how do they translate to the real world? That's where Article 2 comes in. These are the union's official objects. It's basically their mission statement. And you can see right away, it's about a lot more than just getting a bigger paycheck. It's about unity, political action, and this fundamental fight for dignity on the job. Okay, so we've covered the why. Now let's get into the who and the how. How is this whole thing structured? Who actually makes the final decisions? This is the brain of the union, the official chain of command. Now this part is really interesting. Take a look at how power is supposed to flow. You'd probably think the president is at the top, right? Well, according to the Constitution, you'd be wrong. The ultimate authority is the membership. They're at the very top. From there, power flows down to the convention, which then directs the executive board, which then oversees the president. It's an inverted pyramid, where the rank and file, in theory, holds all the power. Let's zoom in on that key group in the middle, the International Executive Board, or IEB for short. Think of them as the board of directors. Since those big conventions only happen every few years, the IEB is the highest authority in between them. It's made up of the top officers and regional directors, and their job is to steer the ship and carry out the orders given to them by the convention. So who does what? How do they split up the duties? Well, you can think of the president as kind of like the CEO. They handle the day-to-day stuff, appoint people, and make initial interpretations of the rules. But the IEB holds the really big structural powers. They give the final green light for strikes, they act as the union's Supreme Court for internal fights, and they even have the power to take over a local union if things go completely off the rails. Okay, so a fancy structure on paper doesn't mean much without people actually participating. So how does the Constitution make sure the members can actually use all that power they supposedly have? This is the democratic heartbeat of the union. And again, the document is crystal clear on this point. All power ultimately comes from the collective membership. Every rule, every office, every single process is, in theory, just there to carry out their will. So how do they actually do it? For decades, it was mainly about electing delegates to go to that big convention. But, and this is a really huge deal, that changed in a major way recently. Since 2020, members can now vote directly for the top leadership. We're talking one member, one vote for the president, the secretary-treasurer, the whole executive board. That is a massive, game-changing shift to direct democracy for the highest offices. Of course, all the structure and democracy in the world doesn't work without resources. So let's talk money. Where does it come from and where does it go? Because make no mistake, this is the lifeblood that allows the union to function and to fight. It all starts with member dues. So for every dollar a member pays, when the union's finances are healthy, it gets split 3 ways. 38 cents of that dollar stays right with the local union. 32 cents goes to the International's general fund to run the whole operation.
and a big 30-cent chunk goes straight into the Strike and Defense Fund.
Now, that 30 cents going into the strike fund isn't always a given. Its fate hangs on this one massive number, $850 million. That's the magic number, the target for the UAW's Strike and Defense Fund. And here's why that number matters so much to every single member. The Constitution has a brilliant automatic trigger built right in. When the strike fund is healthy, over $850 million, dues are set at 2 hours of pay per month. But if a long strike drains that fund down below $650 million, a switch flips. Dues automatically jump up to 2.5 hours of pay, and all that extra cash goes straight to refilling the war chest. It's a system designed to keep the union ready for a fight. And what's that giant fund for? Well, Article 16 is pretty specific. Its main job, obviously, is to support UAW members when they're on an authorized strike. But it can also be used to help other unions in their own fights, support members in jobs where they can't legally strike, and generally to defend the union's bargaining power.
And let's be honest, that's the bottom line. A union's biggest weapon at the negotiating table is the ability to sustain a long, painful strike. That entire due structure and the health of that strike fund, that is the financial bedrock of the union's power.
So when you put it all together, you can see the Constitution is so much more than a rulebook. It's the whole blueprint. It lays out the union's highest ideals, its complicated power structure, the ways members can participate, and the financial engine that fuels the whole machine. It lays everything out perfectly on paper. But that leaves us with one last, really crucial question. A constitution can give you the rules of the game, but who provides the power to enforce those rules? Who actually brings that document to life? Well, as the Constitution itself makes clear, the answer is supposed to be the members themselves.